Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, April 7th, 2025 to order. Sorry, 2026, you're right. I'm a year behind. I'd like to welcome all our guests today in the chamber, our staff who are attending, as well as those who are watching online or who will view this proceeding at a later date. I'm Councillor Richard Novak. I'll be your chair for this evening, and I am joined today by my colleagues from far left, Mayor McNeil Smith, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Rintoul, and on my right, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Garnett. I would like to acknowledge that we're privileged to live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Wasanic nations, the Paquachin, Sartlip, Sakem, Saut, and Malahat, whose stewardship of these lands and waters from time immemorial have allowed us to flourish here today. I'd like to get a motion to approve the agenda as amended. There are two minor amendments. There's one additional piece of correspondence for item 7A, and there is two additional pieces of correspondence for item 7B. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Mayor McNeil Smith. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. And I will ask for approval of the minutes from the preceding Committee of the Whole meeting of March 2nd, 2026. Councillor Duck, Mayor McNeil Smith. Any discussion, corrections, changes? None. Call the question. All in favor? None opposed? Carries. Thank you very much. We're now at our public participation period. This allows members of the public to speak to the committee on any of the items on the agenda tonight, with the exception of items 7A and 7B, which have their own public presentation elements, which essentially leaves only one, it only leaves one agenda item available for people to speak on. So I'll ask for the first time, is there anybody from the public who wishes to come forward tonight? Thank you. Please come forward, turn on the mic, and just tell us your name and where you live.
Good evening to this meeting. My name is Brian Head. I've happily lived in Sydney for 8 wonderful years. I'm here to speak to the grant application for St. Andrew's Church, the Friends. There are some significant changes from when the grant application was submitted. One of the major ones has been very visible to us in the past 4 to 5 weeks, a significant increase in people seeking what St. Andrew's Friends can provide. Significant to it is the number of women. We now have new to us 4 women who are older than 65, and some are in their 70s. 2 are, to my knowledge, are living in their vans. Barbara and my partner attended 2 at Shoppers a week ago, very poorly clad, and we took care of that issue. It speaks to, I guess, the economic circumstances that we are all faced. We provide food by delivery Monday and Friday on a route. Then there's neighbor's lunch on Wednesday. Tuesday is a soup kitchen at St. Elizabeth Catholic, and recently, in the past month and a half, a similar establishment at St. Paul's United. And Central Sandwich United Church also has a Saturday presentation. Friends at St. Andrew, in addition to the food, We bring clothing, assistance with medical requirements. For the last 4 weeks, Saturday brunch has run out of food 3 times in a row. Yesterday was a delivery, and it's the first time in ages that we hit 11 participants at spread between Iroquois Park and Shoppers. We also ran out of food. Expenditures are focused on food, the clothing, partly bought at the thrift stores, and people bring it in by donations. The expenditures are detailed, are separated by the brunch expenditures are separated from the Monday, Friday. We do have at the church a presentation that we made to Cisco when we experimented with them to do service with us, where we had every item for that presentation. It is 12 or 13 months old. I was not able to access it for this meeting. Our Kelly, our pastor, our priest, is on holidays. We have a new secretary 3 weeks into the job. Food is of nutritional value, prepared in-house. The only food that we buy at stores is packaged, and that includes oranges and bananas. St. Andrew's is the only source of a full meal. All the rest that I have mentioned are soup. We have a hot meal on Saturdays. What we buy at the local stores from that's not available to us through Cisco is premium protein, which used to be called Boost, and Gatorade, which is electrolyte. This winter, Friends distributed 21 Stay Dry and Stay Warm kits provided by the town of Sydney. They were very well accepted and appreciated. And with the emergency weather shelter, I believe it was open 6 times, and started out with 4, then went 6 and 7, and down to 4 again.
Excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Head, but could I ask you to wrap up? We're nearing the end of your 4-minute allotment.
Okay. One new development is that we have established a connection with BC SPCA to take care of animals that come with the homeless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Head. I'll ask for a second time if there's anybody who would like to speak to committee. Please come forward. And may we have your name and your place of residence?
Sorry, Rob Simon, Sydney, BC, on 3rd Street. I'm here today because I want to speak to the cherry trees at 9942 3rd Street.
I'm sorry, Mr. Head, that's not on the agenda tonight.
This is, I thought, public.
It is public participation, but
Nope.
the rules say you're only permitted to speak to items that are on tonight's agenda.
Oh, so my comments are actually towards the advisory committee and the structure of it, so that can't be spoken to?
No, not at tonight's meeting. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
but
sorry. I
You'd
misunderstood.
have to wait for that item to either come onto a regular council agenda item or to a committee of the whole.
Oh, this is not, okay.
And that one is not likely to come back to committee of the whole because it's been to committee of the whole. It's been to advisory planning commission. So it will come back to council in the not too distant future. So just keep a watch on the website.
Okay, thank you.
You're most welcome. Hi. Yes, please state your name and where you live. When it's red, press it. There you go.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Joan Summer. I live on Cleveland Road in Sydney, and I'm here to represent the Friends of Sydney Park Society, along with 2 other members of the society. Since I last addressed council, we have signed an agreement with the town of Sydney regarding the removal of various invasive plants such as ivy from Sydney parks. We'd like to thank the council and staff for your encouragement in moving us forward. We're here, we're ready to work, but we are short on tools. As you know, we have applied for a grant in aid from the town. A grant would give us a big boost in getting started by allowing us to buy the tools and safety equipment necessary. We realize that you have difficult choices to make, as the money applied for by various organizations exceeds the amount available for distribution. We feel that your help in getting Friends of Sydney Parks off to a good start will be a long-term benefit to the parks and the town overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to committee today? I'll ask for a third and final time. And not seeing anyone, we'll close public participation. We have nothing for agenda item number 6, so we'll move to item 7A, and that is a development variance permit application number DV100387 at 2353 Harbour Road to reduce the minimum setback from the natural boundary to allow a seawall. And I understand that there's a presentation from the applicant, Mr. Bob Pierce. Welcome.
Good evening. I'll repeat that. My name is Bob Pierce. I am an owner and resident at 2353 Harbour Road, where we have applied for this development variance permit to install a retaining wall within the boundary on the shoreline just below what is building number 1 in our strata complex. We have encountered several years of slippage and erosion along the shoreline on part of the property for Harbour at 2353, and we've had a number of visits from our geotechnical engineers who've looked at it over the years, and we've been monitoring this to measure, if you will, what any differences over the years. Excuse me, in this last year, we've noticed a significant slippage along the shoreline there. Our geotechnical engineers have put forward recommendations to mitigate this by installing this retaining wall right along the shoreline. Fairly small retaining wall, but the height of the retaining wall varies from the allowable 1.2 meters to 2.4 meters because of the shape of the bank there, which to essentially tuck it into this edge of the bank. We've had slippage there over the years. We had a fairly significant occurrence in 2013 where we had enough slippage to cause significant damage to one of the buildings, and which had to be repaired with new footings along that shoreline. We've had geotechnical engineers, we've had structural engineers, we've had an environmental consultants in here, we've had an arborist, so we've done a number of reports to guide us, if you will, through the process of making sure that we've met all the requirements. And so we've had, we're at the stage now where the footings of the building that is noticed movement in there has, there have been measurable movement in the footings, and there's drywall cracks in that building which need to be resolved, and the geotechnical engineers are telling us that the best way to solve that is to stop the slippage with a small retaining wall, and with that we can then take steps to mitigate the damage to any potential slippage to the footings more than what we've encountered. The arborists, we've had an arborist report look at the site, and they have set out guidelines on how this can be constructed without by minimizing any damage to trees or any other planting in that area. They have identified 4 trees that have to be removed from that corner, which would of course mean replanting the same amount, 4 trees on the site, which is in the report that you have. We've contacted DFO to advise, and they've reported back to us with essentially guidelines on what we need to do to minimize any effect on the fisheries in the area, which we will comply with, along with environmental monitoring with the construction. We also met several weeks ago, with our neighbor at Breakwater, which is right next to us on the shoreline, and explained to him what was going on there, and he has provided a letter of support to council, understanding and supporting what we're doing here. We have from our engineers' reports, we have a fairly short window to best deal with this construction, which is summertime, low tides, and with a minimum effect on anything on the shoreline, which should be essentially between July and September of this year. And so I put forward that is essentially what our application is. I'd be happy to answer any questions of committee.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. We'll just ask for you to take a seat for a moment. We'll ask for a report from our development manager. Sure. And then the committee will ask questions both of you and staff at the same time, if that's all right. Thank you. Okay. We do have time for public participation for this particular item. If there's anybody who does wish to speak to this item, they can come forward now. I'll ask for a second time if there's anybody who wishes to speak to item 7A on the agenda, please come forward now. And a third time, if there's anyone who'd like to speak. None? Okay, so we'll close public participation, and we will, for the moment, skip the Q&A and ask for a report from Ms. Verhagen.
Thank you. Good evening. Excuse me. As was indicated, this is an application for a development variance permit, a request to relax the section of the zoning bylaw. Excuse me. The zoning bylaw requires that structures be set back a minimum 15 meters from the natural boundary of the ocean. The seawall that's proposed is greater than 1.2 meters tall. Anything 1.2 meters tall or taller is considered a structure, so therefore it would need a variance to this bylaw regulation, which is what they've requested. As it says in the staff report, staff have no concerns with the requested variance because the seawall, from what the engineer's report says, is required to prevent erosion, which is affecting the stability of the existing houses above the slope. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. I will turn to committee and see if there are any questions either for staff or the applicant. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, this is for Mr. Pierce. If you could come to the microphone, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and for being here to answer questions. It's mentioned in your letter that the landslip is due to both natural and human-caused factors. I'm just curious, what human-caused factors were there that is causing this slippage?
We have had on more than one occasion now over the years broken water lines that have occurred uphill from where we are, and they have followed the natural course of water down to the shoreline there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So as far as mentioning the complete failure of Unit 2, which is The way I looked at it, it looks like they're like 2 units at a time built in buildings in terms of like townhouse construction. What was there any mitigation that was put in place after that failure on that slope for unit 2?
Yes, there was. There was it caused a collapse of a portion of the building. And so, again, same engineers and everybody that were involved in there installed a new fairly substantial footing inland from the shoreline, anchored into rock, and then rebuilt everything up from there.
Did the engineers indicate, I'm just looking at the wall from the diagrams we have, if there would be any positive benefits to Unit 2 having it there, or conversely any potential unintended negative consequences from the construction of that seawall on that slope for Unit 2?
Well, we asked them to look at as many options as they could in terms of what was the best way to do that. Riprap versus the concrete there, and softer options. The area is quite confined, and it's a very steep slope right in that area. And their conclusion was that a small a reinforced concrete retaining wall tucked into that V-shaped area that there was the smallest footprint and the least intrusive. So, and that was their recommendation.
Okay, and thank you for mentioning the trees, because actually it wasn't in the initial report. So that was one of my questions. It mentions ivy being pulled, but didn't mention trees. So I'm assuming if you had an arborist come in conjunction with the engineers, my thought was if you're pulling trees out, that would actually potentially worsen the instability of the slope. But they're assuming that work can be done in such a way that that'll be alleviated.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
they can. So the ones that are being having to be taken out are almost right where the wall will go.
Okay, perfect. And the last question.
Excuse me, Ms. Verhagen, you had something to add?
Yes, thank you. Just to add in about the trees proposed to be removed, I think this is causing feedback because your microphones are on. That staff, as mentioned in the staff report, that staff are currently reviewing a development permit minor application because this property is in an environmentally sensitive area where landscaping alterations are controlled and the trees are protected. So staff are reviewing that, and we did receive an arborist report which has been reviewed by the town's Parks Department and Engineering Department. So those landscape changes are being reviewed separately from this variance request.
Thank you. Just one last question.
Sure.
Is that, can't access the beach, but looking at it from the street and being familiar with it from past work experience, as you go east along the, probably towards like units 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is there a long-term plan in your strata to mitigate this potentially happening and being a recurring issue going forward?
We've asked the same question for obvious reasons on site, and as you go beyond the second building there, which would be units 1 to 8, the bank increases, and it's more and more solid rock there. So it's just that lower portion of the site where the first 2 buildings are that is less stable. It's more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett got so many of my questions. I guess I have one follow-up, through you to staff, on the trees. Since staff is reviewing the tree removal request, and as you mentioned, it was in an ESA, I believe I'd heard Mr. Pierce say that 4 would be replanted. That would, according to our bylaw, would be 8. And so I'm just wondering what kind of discussions you've already had.
Sure. As part of that development permit minor application, the applicant did submit a landscape plan showing where replacement trees would go. And the number of replacement trees required really depends on the size and species of trees being removed. Sometimes it's a 1-to-1 replacement, sometimes it's a 1-to-2, or we need 2 replacement trees or 3 replacement trees, again, depending on the species of the tree and the size of what's coming out. So we are working with the applicant on that.
Oh, okay. I guess, and then my next question, since there's been an environmental consultant, and I just thought in that area, I know there's a lot of heron rookery trees, and if there were herons or wildlife there, what would be the protocol for that removal? Is it just following the wildlife windows, or is there anything that could kind of throw a wrench in that plan based on what's found or what could be found?
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
We're not aware of any from what we've been told by the environmental consultants that are there, that there is nothing they're aware of that would prevent us from going ahead.
Okay. See Ms. Reagan.
Just to comment that would be part of, like, the town's advice back to the applicant is definitely be working within the windows supported by the province for best practices working around protected species nests. I know we know of some further down Harbour Road and down on All Bay as well, so we would check with the province on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, that's all for now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, through to staff, the first question is, this is an ESA. Are we looking at any the remediation that's planned for this? Does that have any impact on hardscaping the shoreline along that area?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because it is in the ESA and council has recently seen other applications for seawalls in the ESA, and there are definitely design guidelines that encourage softer shores approach, so not concrete walls. The difference here is that this one, it would be pinned into the bedrock. Other locations in Sydney do not have bedrock along the shoreline. And I think the engineer has looked at all of those options, and given the situation here with the dwelling unit directly above the slope, it being a very steep slope, and that the bedrock is right there, this is a different situation. So they have looked at those soft shores approach, and as the applicant said, this is the one that would provide the stability for that house that's right above.
Thank you, understood. With respect to the applicant has indicated that they've spoken to DFO, is there any further evaluation of the shoreline that has to be on DFO? Just looks after fisheries in the water, so I'm wondering relative to the shoreline. For example, in Roberts Bay, you have forage fish embedments there, so is there any mitigation on the beachfront that we have to be concerned with?
Thank you. That would be between the applicant and the province. That they haven't proposed any works to the town that go below the natural boundary. So anything that does go below the natural boundary, the applicant would want to talk to the province and to Department of Fisheries and Oceans about those best practices. But in this application, they're not proposing anything there.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Pierce, and thank you, Ms. Verhagen. We do have a recommendation based on the report, and I will look to see if Councillor Duck will read that into the record.
Yes, I so move that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 2353 Harbour Road be notified regarding development variance application number DV 100387 to reduce the setback to the natural boundary to allow for construction of a 2.8 meter high retaining wall along the natural boundary setback in the rear yard of the subject property, and that any written correspondence received before to council at the time of consideration for approval of this variance.
Second.
Thank you, councillors. Any discussion, or would you like to motivate? No?
I don't think so. I think we've gotten a good explanation from staff and from the applicant.
Councillor Garnett? Anybody else? Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, I just briefly to add, since Councillor Duck did mention the forage fish, I did look on Peninsula Streams and Shorelines map. There is a sampling area there, but there have never been forage fish recorded in that location. But that, the applicant is looking at works there. They have clearly some data, and the group is monitoring that. So if they can stay in touch with them, I think that would be great, and I'd love to see that. That's only a comment.
Thank you, councillor. Anybody else to motivate? None? Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll continue on to 7B, and this is a zoning amendment application number RZ100115 at 2270 Harbour Road to amend the zoning bylaws conditions of use for retail and office uses in the marine industrial W1 zone to allow non-marine related uses in 4 commercial units on the property. To begin with, I believe we have a presentation from the applicant, Mr. Mark Holland. Welcome. And if you just press the button on the mic.
It's going to be red, absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Mark Holland. I'm working with the applicant team on this project, and I just have a few slides and comments for sort of the rationale that underpins the application. Okay, is that the right one? Oh, something's working now. Thank you. As I think you all know where this site is, this project came to you a few years ago for approval and council approved it. It has since been constructed, so this application is not for a new project. This is to deal with an existing project that has been developed. It has an operating marina, a 200-unit storage facility for members of the marine community in the area, 2 residential units and 4 small commercial units. We're here today to just talk about the 4 commercial units. Basically, the challenge that we have here in front of us is that the, okay. Seems to work that time. Thank you, sir. That's great. Much appreciated. The project was constructed a couple of years ago, and some of it is doing great. Unfortunately, these 4 units have faced massive headwinds when being brought to the market. Only one of them has sold. We have the Collier's broker here tonight. John is here tonight to answer questions and make a little bit of a comment after I'm done about the work that's been done to try and move this project forward. The key issue here is the phrase in the zoning, which I'll talk about a little more in detail here. Between the north and the south side of Harbour Road, the zoning on the north side asks things be marine related. There's no definition of marine related in the zoning bylaw, and this has created an uncertainty which has scared off quite a number of investors or purchasers or people who want to lease the unit, because they're not sure whether they can get a business license if they proceed. So that's the really key issue that we have here. And so the units have been sitting for a while. This is not the owner attempting to do an end run. They're just basically dealt with in that regard. They find themselves in this unfortunate situation. Next slide, please. So the owner has come forward to ask for a text amendment that a couple of uses which are currently permitted 50 feet away across on the south side of Harbour Road now be permitted on the north side, as in general office and general retail. So this is the core of this application. The owner has also had significant interest from the healthcare community and is interested in council's opinions and the opportunity to possibly allow these offices, which are, one is 800 square feet, 2 of them are 1,600 square feet, but on 2 floors. So they lend themselves really fundamentally to an office use more than a heavy, large industrial building of that kind. They're interested in that opportunity to be able to allow those uses in these buildings to serve the marine industrial community that is there. Next slide, please. I'd like to just offer a few thoughts on the zoning and the OCP before I talk about risks, which is the primary concern tonight, before I close. When this when your OCP was adopted, when you and your wisdom adopted that, there's a single designation for the area. And this is seen as essentially a marine industrial area with one designation. When we get to the zoning, a dotted line has been drawn down Harbour Road, and there's a north and a south version of the zoning. The intent of the concept was quite clear and logical, that being that the north side adjacent to the water would be core marine industrial uses. And on the south side, given the entire area is surrounded by residential, we would have sort of maybe more transitional uses. We would allow the marine uses, but also permit some other uses like office and retail and some of those other kinds of uses there. So this was essentially how the area was envisioned. Next slide, please. Now, from a zoning point of view, we manage uses for a number of reasons. We do not want to empty our downtowns out to surrounding commercial developments in the edges. We've seen that happen all too often, so we tend to try and constrain those. For industrial areas, we don't want high-value uses coming in large amounts, such that they would change the land value substantively, thereby essentially driving industry out. We see this happen all too often in large metropolitan areas. In the case that we have at hand, none of those are essentially a key risk in this regard. And so we find ourselves grappling with the challenges. With respect to marine related, I think the biggest challenge that we have on this one is the definition. Because of the nature of marine industrial areas, they're not like a general industrial area. We have folks who live aboard, we have folks who play aboard, we have folks who just work aboard. So we've got the full range of human uses that happen around boats, essentially, is really the point here. And that begins to create a slightly different context than a regular industrial use. So in this marine industrial use, they need parts for their boats, but they also need tools and light bulbs and plastic bags and other things for their boats. They need marine slickers, they need life jackets, they also need sweaters and dry socks and topsiders for it. They need lunch, but they also need lots of other services in order to live and work and play in the boat environment. They need shipwrights, but they also need accountants and brokers and lawyers in order to do business in that area. They need marine lubricants, they need sunshine or sunscreen. So this list becomes a bit complicated when we try and say, what would be marine related? What percentage of what kind of use would be permitted to do that? That has created the uncertainty that's brought us here today. Next slide, please. So the OCP has a really great vision here for this area, and it sees it as a marine industrial community because people live there, because they play there, because they do all of these things there, unlike just one place they would go to work. We end up with kind of a community here that includes quite a few other uses, and this was Council's vision in the OCP. It didn't just include industrial, it included office and retail, restaurants, housing, etc. And so the crux of the question we're dealing with tonight is in this unique area. Is the dotted line down the center of Harbour Road that distinguishes what use can happen on each side actually hold in the face of reality? Next slide, please. Before I jump to the reality here, I'd just like to also laud council for their vision in this. The old school way of city planning, we had all the commercial in one area, industrial somewhere else, we lived somewhere else, and we played and recreated somewhere else. Today, we've seen the traffic impacts that come from that, and so now we use a mix. We keep these general areas set aside, but I think we've jumped to the end there. If you could go back to the contemporary planning practice, please. Thank you. So what we do here is we use accessory uses. We limit them by sizes of space, so we can get a little bit of a mix of uses so people can get what they need during the day where they're working or playing or living, within 1 to 2 kilometers as a general route. And since this is a couple kilometers outside of the core, council, the consultants, and your staff approved in the OCP that some of these uses would be part of this community. Next slide, please. So the risks that we're facing here, I think we can consider them as, and as some are noted in the council report, that are we undermining the vitality of downtown Sydney if we permitted some office or some retail use here? Well, obviously in the OCP that was not seen as a risk because it is permitted on the south side of the road. Would we be undermining the value or the integrity of the marine industrial area? I don't think that would be the case here. In fact, we might even increase it because of the diversity of uses supporting those who work and live and play in that marine area. Next slide, please. And this brings us to, if I leave you with nothing else tonight, it's this observation, that unfortunately reality got in the way of our concept. So the concept was that the south side of the road would be a transition zone. In fact, what it is 50% residential, and it's residential of an age which is not going to get torn down in our lifetimes. Those homes have a good 50 years left in them before someone would probably try and assemble that entire area to remove all what's there and put in something new. The other nearly 50% of it is Van Isle Marine's boat storage and repair facility. So it's fully active and there and operating. They have spent years acquiring that land and have it secured and have even spoken with staff about more investments to deepen the boat repair component of that. Between these two is a little sliver of asphalt. It's owned by Parks Canada. So we contacted Parks Canada after a discussion with staff that suggested maybe it would develop into office and retail. The reality of that discussion was we talked to the superintendent and she said that under no terms will that land ever be sold. It's the parking area for the Gulf Island Center. It's also the works yard, the industrial works yard for all of the national parks work that happens out of that in this area. So that's not going anywhere. So the idea of the transition that was spoken about in the zoning is excellent one in concept, but in reality that land isn't going anywhere in our lifetime. And so all of the uses that we're seeing as this complete community here can't happen on the south side, and thus the rationale for the request to allow 2 of them, along with the potential addition of maybe some healthcare office, would be moved into just these units. Next slide, please. So what we see here is the opportunity to realize the OCP vision, which otherwise won't be realized in this area. We're only 50 feet away from where they are allowed. We would be dealing with limiting this and any potential impact on the surrounding area through 3 ways. One is it would only be permitted at this address, so it doesn't impact any of the other uses. It would be size limited to just the size of these units, so it couldn't even expand into any of the rest of the building that is there. It's just those 4 units, and most importantly, it would be an accessory use, and as such, it could never be a standalone use without the operating existing marina and all the other primary industrial uses that are currently on that site. So there's very little risk here. And if I may offer one thought of optimism here, over 30 years in this business, I've seen how the market interacts with our zoning in some interesting ways. I've seen entire areas of residential driven out by commercial over time when the demand is there. And the challenge that we have, and the Collier's broker would like to come and say a few words after me, is that the market demand isn't there today, and we can't time travel into the future to force it. The units have already been empty for 2 years, and no public or private benefit is seen from leaving them empty until this demand that exceeds the uncertainty of what marine related actually grows, that wants an 800 square foot unit or a 1,600 square foot unit. It's a challenging piece to put together into the market. So final slide, please. So then in summary, I would just like to return to the request that the office and retail use that are permitted across the street be allowed here, and also that medical office be entertained as a discussion given there's demand. There's a lot of people who live and work in the area that would benefit from chiropractic uses or other healthcare uses, and that there's little to no risk that this would affect the downtown or the integrity of the marine area, and instead would bring many benefits to the marine industrial community that is there. So I'm here, the owner is here, and we have the Collier's broker here as well to answer any questions should they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. We'll go right away to the public participation portion of this. This will allow members of the public to come up and speak for 4 minutes to this and this item only. And so I'll ask for the first time if there's anybody who wishes to speak to this item. Please come forward and state your name and where you reside.
My name is John Fyatt. I live in Victoria, but I'm the Collier's broker for this property here. So I just wanted to say my piece about how my team and I have been marketing this property actively for the past 8 months now. And prior to our involvement, the property was marketed by another national brokerage for over 18 months. Despite continuous exposure over a combined marketing period over 2 years, the units have not been sold or leased. The consistent and primary reason has really just been the restrictive marine-based zoning, which significantly limits the pool of buyers. We've done everything we can and exhausted all marketing resources by direct letters, cold calling, MLS exposure, on our Collier's website, social media campaigns, and it's just simply been there hasn't been a demand for this type of use. There's been other people who have reached out for different type of commercial and retail uses, but as soon as the marine zoning comes into play, there's just really been no demand for this type of use. That's all.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? I'll ask for a second time if anybody would like to speak to this item on the agenda. And I will ask for a third and final time if there's anybody who would like to speak to this item. And seeing no one, will close public participation on this item 7B. We will hold off on committee Q&A until after the report from Ms. Verhagen.
Thank you. Good evening again. So as was indicated, this is a request to change the text of the zoning bylaw to take away the specific conditions of use for retail and office in the W1 zone, which is the zoning of this property. The staff report does not support, or the staff do not support the request, given the limited number of properties in Sydney, zone W1. There's 14 properties, zone W1. There's many properties elsewhere in the town, in the downtown commercial area, that allow retail and office without these restrictions. The official community plan is clear that this area is for the promotion and development of marine industrial uses. That was existing in Sydney's previous OCP and previous to that. So before 2022, when the town adopted the current OCP, that was the direction for development or changes in this area. Over the years, we've had people requesting to add residential uses on the north side. Those are limited as well. The focus here is for marine industrial uses. The staff report provides information and policy direction from the OCP and is clear that those uses are permitted without the restrictions on the south side. As the applicant indicated, it is all part of a complete community. They mentioned the distance from the downtown, and so also in this neighborhood, at the corner of Harbour Road and Resthaven Road, there is a property zoned for neighborhood commercial. There's a corner store on the property. There's also a mixed-use development just to the east of that with townhouses. Sorry, not just east, one more east. There's 2 townhouse developments there on the south side, with a small commercial unit in the townhouse development. The boatyard that was mentioned, that's operated by Van Isle Marina on the south side of Harbour Road, that does take up several properties that may in future be redeveloped. It's hard to know what that property owner's plans are for the future, but there is land on the south side that could be redeveloped for future mixed commercial uses. So yes, staff do not support the application given the limited area in Sydney for marine industrial uses. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. I will turn to committee now, and questions for either staff or developer. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the developer. So thank you for the presentation and information. And so am I correct in assuming that these are being offered for sale as opposed to rent or lease, or how are
Yes.
they being marketed?
Yes, at this time, they're offered for sale.
For sale.
Lease is an option if the sale can't happen at all, but that is the desired approach here, yes.
And what are they listed, the prices? What?
Do you want to?
We're listed from 500,000 as the smallest one, and to 1.1 million is the biggest one. The other one's $1 million, and so our price per square foot is less than $600 a square foot, and it's far below replacement costs. It's not been a price issue at all. It's just simply the use.
Okay, and it just, so is, I'm just thinking about, say, small marine businesses that may not have the financial wherewithal, who could use such a unit, but can't afford that amount of investment. So are short-term leases available?
Yeah.
Can the applicant please come to the microphone?
Sorry to jump in here, but yes, we have been marketing them for sale and for lease. Initially, it just started out for sale, and then with no success, we went to for lease, went back to all those groups who, we had been chasing and said to lease, and there's still just simply no one wanting to expand. A lot of these groups, like, yacht brokers, don't necessarily need an office these days, and there just wasn't a driving force to that area. So we've offered them for lease, for sale at like ridiculously, low rates compared to the market, and just still no demand for that use from the marine industry.
Is there any possibility of converting those from like office units into more, some other kind of space that might be more, relevant or useful for that sector in terms of, additional storage or?
I mean, maybe he could board them up and put storage there, but like, I don't know if that would
Yeah.
just be mini storage, which he already has 200 lockers on below, but that would just be for people storing their boxes.
Right,
Which,
okay.
maybe that could be use, but in terms of actual marine economy and a business,
Yeah,
there's been no demand, for
okay,
it.
thanks for that.
If I may, through the chair, that is the default. If this does not proceed, then that's probably what we would do, is go back to the other allowable uses and essentially do away with that active frontage use and turn it into a storage facility, because we all have stuff to store, and around boats, we have lots of stuff to store. So we just thought it was worth coming to ask council if they would be open to this change before we essentially retreat back into that, because it's a less valuable use for the community.
Okay, so there is a backup plan You do have a plan then where you could use that space for a more marine sort of related or allowable under the zoning bylaw?
Yeah, it'd be whatever is allowable under the zoning, bylaw. I mean, the zoning bylaw allows quite a few things in this regard, and they've been trying to chase this, and the demand just isn't there for them right now. At some point in the future, there will be. It's just in the meantime, they sit largely empty or are not really part of what they could be.
So you say at some time in the future, what do you think are
We can't predict the
factors current-
future. I would say 5, 10, 15 years probably before, if you're looking for something like a yacht broker or someone who just does something around boats in the marine industry there. I don't know how long that would take before that demand gets large enough that they don't go anywhere else. They have to be right on top of the water. It's really just a question of when that demand for people that need to be on top of the water finally grows, and we can't predict that. Currently, the show suggests after 2 years, there's hardly even any interest at all, so this is going to be a long-term arc.
So when you say 5 to 10 years from now, what is that based on?
That's just a hunch from a career of working around these sorts of things.
Okay.
Based on what the market is at, a lot of it's what the cost of construction. This is if you're not working in the space, the numbers that he's talking about are quite uncomfortable given how much you're charging from what it costs to construct these units. That's the problem we have with housing. It's the problem we have with everything. It's so expensive to construct things now that the market is just capped out. It's really, really difficult, and that's why we don't see a lot of new development going on. We still see some cranes from things that were financed 5 years ago, but this is a very slow field right now. And we're not seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Sorry to be depressing here, but we can't see interest rates coming down much more. The interest rates are basically, mortgage rates are set in a international discussion of bond rates. The world is not a stable place right now, so bonds are going up, they're not going down, and that means mortgages don't go down. The federal interest rate is already down where it should be. It's dropping that much more. It may not even have an impact on mortgage rates. Buyers aren't making anything more. Businesses are slowing down. Canadian population, BC population shrank last year, so there's too many forces going down. So I'm going, like, after 30 years of looking at this, it takes a while for these to begin to come up. You get little flashes of optimism every now and then, but to sustain a push that would take a marine industrial field and push it forward far enough that we would now have lots of demand. That's why I'm thinking that we're looking at quite a few years.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just have something to add on to that. I would say it could be even potentially a lot longer than 5 or 10 years. I think a lot of the marine-based companies, right now, they're almost more like tech companies. You'll see, like, in the general office sector, a lot of these people are working from home, and they don't necessarily need a storefront to operate their businesses. Like, whether it's an ocean robotics company, it's a lot of tech, and it doesn't make sense for them to have an actual physical office in a lot of these cases. So that's why there is demand for, retail and people needing more experiences, whether it's an accountant, they want to go meet them in person. But for example, like a yacht broker, they don't need to have an actual office. They can just go meet people. So it's almost that sector in whole, I don't know when, if there is a timeline, even if the economy was booming, when it would make sense for them to have a storefront there.
Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, through you to staff, Ms. Verhagen, option 2 in the staff report, the conclusion of that option, if it were to be pursued, reads on its conclusion, and whether to schedule a public hearing on the bylaw, which implies that would be optional.
Through the chair, that is our standard wording for when there's the option to go ahead with preparing a bylaw and moving it forward. Because if council would have to give the bylaw first reading and second reading, and then they'd have to make a motion for staff to prepare for a public hearing. So there's 3 separate resolutions that would have to be made there by council. So if it doesn't get first or second reading, we're not putting in this option that you must, at this point, say we're going to schedule a public hearing. It's just kind of the order of operations. For something like this, a public hearing is required because this is not a residential development. So it's not subject to the new legislation that says no public hearings for a residential development.
Yeah.
There would have to be a public hearing if there's going to be a zoning amendment.
Thank you. And I see the staff report notes as well that if this were to proceed to first reading, then a mail-out notice would be distributed to property owners. So we are getting full notice. We would get if this were to advance in that manner, the public hearing as well on the bylaw. So in terms of consultation and insight from a broader selection of neighbors, that would be part of that process.
I can just speak to that. So the notice would go out after second reading before, excuse me, before the public hearing happens. If this was a residential development, which I know it's not, in that case, we would send the notice out before the first reading happens. That's in accordance with the new legislation. But in this case, we would send the notice out after a zoning amendment bylaw has had 2 readings, and we would tell people when and where the public hearing would be happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Holland, for your presentation. A couple of questions. And it's been mentioned a couple of times about this space, not yacht brokers, consultants, not looking for a storefront space. Is this a recent development just in the last year or two, or is this something that's been a kind of recurring theme for more than a few years now?
Some questions on the market.
Yeah, so at Colliers, we've had this listed for about 8 months now, but before he had it listed with CBRE for, I want to say 18 months, almost 2 years. Yeah. So
I'm just wondering, like, is this a trend that was outside of this development? Is this a trend that's been occurring
100%, yeah, across.
beyond even that many years ago?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So my follow-up question is, and I had staff relay information to me today. So our zoning bylaw, the more constrictive uses under the zoning bylaw in 2024 was adopted. The retail sales were similar in the 2015 bylaw that existed prior. And so the more constrictive uses for office is kind of altered a bit in terms of can't have medical, can't have dental, those things. So when I'm looking at the whole process, I'm wondering, I'm assuming there was a financial viability study or market research done of some sort before this proceeded. So if these things were already in place, some of them, like the conditions you spoke to, plus the zoning bylaw on retail sales, I'm curious as to why the development would have moved forward in this way and not been altered to reflect market conditions.
Well, I think, okay, sure. Yeah.
He's the guy who did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so prior to us doing this development, COVID happened. And I mean, take a look at all the buildings downtown. The government offices are all half empty. The whole world changed with the offices, retail, everything. So that's what happened. And I suppose that was the big thing. And then from there, everything, that was sort of the new norm, was a lot of people just started working at home and sort of working from their phones and evolving that way. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, I understand that part, but I'm just, in terms of the context of your specific development, the building permit was issued in, I believe, November of 2023. We approved a DP in June of 2023. So those conditions were already there. So I'm wondering why those conditions were
we didn't
present.
know the whole aftermath of that. It's just starting to hit now. I mean, they're still talking about trying to get people to go back to work and stuff. So it's all still happening. And I think downtown's got a huge problem with vacancy and stuff like that, with all their buildings and stuff sitting empty.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation and taking our questions this evening. My first question is to the applicant. Can you? I know you have mentioned them, and they're probably in the package as well. But the square footages of the 4 units, roughly.
So they're about an 800 square foot floor plate. One of them is 1 floor, so it's 800 square feet. The other 2 that are available are 2 floors, so they're on 2 floors, so 1,600 square feet.
Okay. If an interested party came forward, given the way they're constructed today with 4 entrances, the separation walls, whatever code requirements are and that sort of thing, but if there was an interested party who wanted all of that space but in one area, is it feasible to change the building, or would that really involve a reconstruction? I mean, you do see there's 14 other W1 properties on there, and several of them are larger, than the space that's there.
Yes, the walls are not concrete walls. You can begin to connect these units in some form. I don't know if we can connect all 4, but we could certainly connect the ones on each side of the main central breezeway that goes through.
Okay, thank you. The second question for the proponent is, very significant storage areas, the 200, some 200 units, and that sort of thing. It's considered a marine-related use within our zoning bylaw. But technically speaking, and I'm not asking you to give an indication of what the percentage is or isn't, but technically, individuals could be storing things in those storage units that have nothing to do with marine uses.
Technically, yes, we don't govern what they put in their units so long as they're meeting fire and safety requirements, yes.
Thank you. My next question, Chair, is through to staff, and that is the proponent in their presentation spoke to a request that the rezoning application be to this site only, be to this size, to the unit sizes that exist now, and that it be maintained as accessory, which would be limiting in a number of ways. Because as I read the staff report, I mean, one of the considerations for council is whether to change these uses throughout the entire W1 zone, which would be across all 14 or 15 properties. But the applicants indicating the request would be, are there, I'm not seeking a challenge whether staff supports it or not, but is that feasible to actually do a rezoning, proceed with a rezoning application on that basis?
So through the chair, it is possible to have a zoning amendment where a use is permitted on a legally described property. So we can draft, and this exists in the zoning bylaw for certain uses on other certain properties, where it says on a lot legally described as X, this is a permitted use, where it's only permitted on one property in that zone. So such a change could happen with these. The conditional use may not apply to these properties legally described as X, these units here. In terms of a requirement that they can only exist if they're accessory to other, like the marina use or the warehousing and closed storage and distribution for boats and marine equipment that is permitted in the zoning bylaw, that's harder because we can't force a business to stay open and we can't force them to maintain a business license. If they close their business license and leave, then, I mean, I suppose we would have the recourse of closing the business license for whatever retail or office use is happening in these smaller units up top. But it does become trickier in terms of the business license aspect of that.
Thank you very much.
Just if I could follow on that, the W1 zone does permit, I think, about 22 uses that are not dwelling unit or home occupation, which is related to a dwelling unit. So there is a number of other permitted commercial uses. We could potentially draft a zoning bylaw that says like the retail or office use without the marine restriction is permitted only in conjunction with some of those other marine related uses happening on other parts of the property. But as I said, it is challenging for staff to enforce that over time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair, and if I may ask a question through to the proponent. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Holland. I believe that one of these 4 units has been sold or leased. Is that true?
That is correct.
And who is the current occupant of that?
That is Prime
Yacht Systems.
Prime Yacht Systems,
Prime
yes.
Yacht Systems. So there is some demand there, is illustrated. So
There was demand for one, yes.
all right. And you mentioned that you have interest from other potential users. Can you define, I think you mentioned medical, but is it just the medical field that
Yeah, there's some interest from other retail and other more general office, folks who use these areas for more industrial uses, like sort of some storage or warehousing kind of uses that mix it with a bit of retail or wholesale kind of uses. Mm-hmm. So there is interest in this regard. I didn't self-identify as marine oriented. The things they sell, I'm sure, contribute to the marine area, but the uncertainty was sufficient to basically make them back off. That was sort of the thrust of what we've discovered on this over the last, what John's discovered over the last couple of years on trying to market these.
And how do the sale or lease rates compare to a property on Beacon, for example?
That's a great question through the chair. I think John would probably be better to answer that.
We're substantially lower on a lease. Like when we were marketing them for lease, we were at $21 a square foot. On Beacon, we're doing deals at $35, $40 a square foot net. So almost half of that price, and there was still nothing.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Anybody else that has any questions? Nope. All right. We do have a recommendation. I don't know if anybody wants to read in the recommendation or has an alternate recommendation that they wish to make, but now is the time. Councillor Rintoul. I'm sorry, were you first?
Yeah.
Councillor Keith then, sorry.
I will recommend that zoning amendment application number RZ 100115 be denied.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Will the mover motivate?
Sure. So, you know, while I sympathize somewhat with the developer on this, I agree with staff that it's a slippery slope for us to go down once we start doing spot zoning, especially in this area. Especially when I hear that the rates on Harbour Road are significantly lower than Beacon, and so I worry about setting a precedent for that and taking business off of Beacon, and also using what I think is valuable space close to the waterfront. The other thing that's in my mind is comments about it might take 5 to 10 years before those spots might be of interest to the marine sector. And I don't know if I agree with that. When I hear what's discussions that have been taking place at SIP through Coast with the new Marine Committee that has been set up with the Chamber of Commerce, it seems to me that this is a sector, the marine sector, is one that is actually poised for growth. The federal government is pumping millions of dollars into the marine sector, into this South Island region specifically, as part of their strategy to boost infrastructure for national defense. What that means for us and out in this area is spin-off impacts to our marine sector. And so those we still haven't seen the impact of that, and I think that is still to come. We've also seen the provincial government spend millions of dollars with offering grants for infrastructure expansion and improvement to a lot of marine businesses in this sector, like Vector, like Titan Boats, and a few others. So what we've seen in the last few years is a significant investment by senior levels of government to promote an industry that they recognize where there's growth potential. And so, when I see that, when I see senior levels of government putting that amount of money into that sector, when I hear through SIP and through Coast and the Marine Committee at the Chamber about the importance of maintaining space for the marine sector, I think we need to do that. While it's true that, may be true, I don't dispute the fact that yacht brokers are operating a bit differently, and there's businesses that are operating from home. That's been a trend as was identified like shortly after COVID. To me, that's something that would have been predictable if there was a trend towards more at-home office space, and we've seen that continue for several years. If I was a developer, I would be cluing into that and saying, maybe we better do something a bit different there and find out what the needs of that community are. I think, you know, a lot of time and consultation goes into the planning with our zoning bylaw and our OCP, and what we heard in both of those from the Marine community was save that space. And that's really our only little slice where we've got that opportunity. So I think it's really important that we continue to maintain that. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is, it's challenging, but when I was looking through this and pulling out the OCP and the zoning bylaw and rereading everything multiple times on the weekend, I was rehashing in my mind this particular area during the discussion with the engagement with the community. And we actually had people in this chamber that spoke specifically to this marine area, both through the OCP and the zoning, and spoke to and gave good input on where we landed on uses and conditional uses that helped formulate it. And their argument was much like Councillor O'Keefe was saying, and much like is referred to here in the CRD, and many people during the process speaking at just how scarce and important industrial and marine industrial areas are, and if you have them, protect them. And that's kind of how the OCP, in my mind, evolved in this area, and the zoning that followed it in 2024. I was just looking at a letter from Mr. Dickinson of the Vancouver Isle Marina, and his comment, incremental exceptions can cumulatively weaken the policy framework designed to preserve the marine-dependent working waterfront, really stuck out at me. And I actually, that's what I was thinking in my mind, and he put it into words beautifully. When you have little areas in your community that are vitally important economically, you have to really foster them and care for them. And I think we did that really well with our OCP and our zoning bylaw, and I think we need to protect them. And I think back to 2018, 2022, when we had in the West Side Industrial, and we had a dog grooming business that wanted to open up in there, and that was a big discussion of the day. And we said no, because we knew just how important keeping the industrial area as it was for the community, for many, many reasons. And so although I can, as Councillor O'Keefe said, I sympathize with the conditions that exist, as was discussed in answers to my questions. These conditions didn't just pop up recently. So maybe there needed to be a different way of designing the building. I don't know. I'm not an architect, in a way that could have maybe drawn other people into this. And maybe that will come back in 5 to 10. Maybe it'll come sooner, as Councillor O'Keefe said. I can't say that. I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not a predictor of time into the future. But I do know that at the time that we did these OCP and zoning updates, we thought that these were important areas to protect, and we zoned them this way accordingly. So, and it's only been just not even 2 years since we did that. So I'm going to respect what the public and our staff brought for us, and that we supported at the time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I won't support the motion. If this is defeated, I'll move option 2. Look, I appreciate the process we went through. I appreciate the input and the value of the marine industrial community, in particular on Harbour Road, our working harbour. But the reality has turned out to be that we've got a beautiful, new, half-empty building. And I don't see how that benefits Sydney. I don't see how that benefits Harbour Road. I don't see how that benefits businesses perhaps contemplating coming to Sydney and looking for what they would view as an appropriate venue for their business venture. And I agree with the presenter that there's probably a lot of services that are going to contribute to the marine sector and to boaters in general that could go into this space. What I don't subscribe to is that there's all this massive provincial money out there to support the sector that is going to appeal to an entity that is looking for 800 square foot office space. It's not a capacity that's going to lend itself to an organization, a business of that nature. And maybe those spaces, well, they might be appropriate for small retail, particularly the ground floor units or components of the units. But even at 1,600 square feet, those are not lending themselves to an industrial type opportunity. Are these, because they're being marketed at a lower square foot rate than Beacon, going to move retail business off Beacon? In my opinion, no, they're not. Businesses that are on Beacon enjoy the profile that offers. It enjoys the expansive parking opportunities that are in our downtown, the foot traffic that's in our downtown, and so frankly, yes, those are going to be office spaces or retail spaces at a lower rate than Beacon. And again, I don't think it's going to prompt someone to relocate their venture off of Beacon to save a few dollars on the square footage. So I'm not interested in seeing us draw a line in the sand and say that, because 2 or 3 years ago we went through this process, we've got to stick to it. Sir, you've got to wait until you find a tenant. You've done a lot of good projects in Sydney. I'm not looking to see this as an opportunity for you because of the work you've done here. I'm looking to see this as an opportunity for the community to see these office spaces or retail spaces utilized instead of sitting empty. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I won't support this motion either. I actually thought that the idea of having some more businesses that had broader commercial and office uses would actually probably be something that would help revitalize this area. A lot of times people who work in industrial jobs work very long hours, and having something that they can go to if they're looking at medical appointments, particularly during the day on a break, they're not going to go into Beacon. They're not going to get in their car and drive down there, but they will be able to walk. They will walk a block down and then be able to go back to work to finish their 10 or 16-hour shift, depending on how they're trying to get a boat out, right? And so I think having things that are meant to actually serve the workers that are there, who are there for long hours and are not going to be going downtown because everything will be closed before and after their work. This is actually going to be one of the only retail or commercial places in Sydney probably some of these workers ever go to, and then they're going to drive home to Langford where they live. And so I think this would actually be complementary and serve the people we have working down there, which is actually a very core part of keeping businesses strong. As long as, they've even explicitly said it would be part of being an accessory use to marine, and, to be mindful of stopping that creep. As Councillor Rintoul said, this is not somewhere that retail people are going to want to go. This is a place that industrial people are going to want to see retail for them, not the other way around. I don't think we're looking forward to any growth industries actually for quite a long time. I think we're not heading into a recession. I think we're heading into something much worse, and I think being able to get anything in this building will be a blessing. There is currently a very large commercial space that used to have the kind of corner store that had that kind of hardware and food and things like that. Queen's Grocery is sitting up on Resthaven, partway. If people were going to be driving out from that area to get things, they'd have gone up to there. They haven't. Nobody has purchased that place. It's also sitting vacant for a really long time. I think, if we can get something that was actually in an area where, again, there's a bit of a concentration of businesses, we might be helping businesses actually stay in there. It's important to have this marine access was really critical, and we were told this at the time of the OCP because it has access to the water. This is one of the businesses where you can see that little blue line actually excludes those docks. It was maintaining that access to the water is important, and I think we have done that with our OCP. On the other hand, not every marine business needs that access to the water. Otherwise, we wouldn't have 7 businesses on the west side that are building boats and having marine-based industries. When I worked at Stantec, looked down on people building boats from my office. Well, not usually because they're welding, I don't want to look, but I could hear them building boats from my office, and then they'd trailer them out. And so I know that one of the biggest issues with these industries is actually having a very large space if you're building a boat, and large storage spaces. So this was a kind of development that was put in to provide office space that supported that, and we're not needing that type of office space to support it. We are needing the type of office space that supports things that worker bodies need, and not the boats themselves. I'm not actually worried about there being people who need to do the kind of like manufacturing that SIP is looking at, where they're going to be building drones, probably, and other things the Esquimalt-based people will probably get to play with, they're not going to be using these. They're going to be using the very large warehouses out on the airport lands that they can build, just like the West Coast Spill Response and Titan Boats and the other 4 guys out there who currently do welding and manufacturing of boats and then trailer them out. And so I think, on balance, having 3 businesses move in here that would fill that need, I think is quite desirable for this neighborhood. And I think the applicant pointed out the issues with the kind of way the OCP has planned the mixed-use evolution of this neighborhood and kind of the flaws in that plan very aptly, because we've also seen that with the west side and the redevelopment there, and kind of the challenges in getting that to redevelop in mixed use. And it's kind of been the same thing from the industrial users. And so we know that there's something we need to be thinking a little harder about how we do mixed use and industrial to actually allow our industrial applicants to flourish. And we know sticking really to the way is on paper is not helping these clients, because they're so frequently kind of like doing one-off things and things that are around. They just don't fit into a template as well. And so I don't want to force them into a template that forces them to fail when we could do something to help them succeed.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a couple of comments if there are no other first-time speakers. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the motion, and quite frankly, my preference is to see us go with an alternate motion that allows for more input from the Harbour Road industrial area. We've had limited feedback. Notices went out as part of this application already. I'm a little bit surprised that we didn't get more of a response to, that notice that went out, but it's sometimes a gradual process. But having said that, the reasons that I would like to see it go to an engagement stage, if you will, is in a number of areas, and the presenter made two key points for me. One, undermining downtown retail service. Allowing these office uses on Harbour Road is not going to undermine the downtown at all. While the rents for these spaces may be half of Beacon Avenue, I've leased space for operating businesses on the side streets and of Beacon Avenue, and it's half of what it is on Beacon Avenue. And the reason you locate, and I can tell you the number of stories over the last 25 years of the number of businesses that decided to locate on the side streets, on 3rd Street, 4th Street, and 5th Street, because they couldn't afford, or they felt they couldn't afford the rent. But quite frankly, when I had my business on Beacon Avenue and I had another business on 4th Street, my traffic was more than double on Beacon Avenue, just because of the pedestrian behavior in the downtown. Enough said on that. It doesn't, this request for rezoning doesn't undermine downtown Sydney, or downtown Beacon Avenue in the related area. In terms of undermining the marine industrial zone, there has been intent for at least 25 years. I came 25 years ago, and there was intent and advocacy on the part of long-term marine industrial operators on Harbour Road to create a unique marine industrial area on Harbour Road. And it was very understandable. 25 years ago, the marine industrial businesses on Harbour Road and other businesses in West Sydney, the West Sydney North Saanich Industrial Park, have gained a reputation in the entire Pacific Northwest, for the services that they provide. And they've flourished, they've grown, and they've flourished, ups and downs over the 25 years. I remember starting my business 11 days before 9/11. And so there are different things. Most recently was the pandemic, and it affects businesses, and we're still looking at outcomes, as one of the proponents indicated this evening, making predictions back in 22, 23 in terms of what the outcomes will be from the pandemic. They're still not realized yet what the outcomes are. At any rate, in terms of undermining that marine industrial that has been carefully thought out and in the most current OCP, but the 2 OCPs previous to that, there was certainly a lot of intent there. But when you look at what is actually the history of that area, and you look at how the rezoning, how the zoning has been applied in successive OCPs, I want to start with the base rationale for creating the marine industrial zone there was because of the lack of industrial space. The fact that there was a limit to it on Harbour Road and there was a limit to it in West Sydney. Yet at the same time, if you go back to say 2011, you have a restaurant at Van El Marina and you had the Blue Peter Pub on this property. Two flourishing restaurants. On the Blue Peter property was an insurance agency, which if you Google it, you can go to Underwriters Canada or actually a fire website. Their insurance was mostly marine related, but at the same time, just like the storage area, industrial storage area that's on Harbour Road, it doesn't have you don't have to have marine use to use it. And if there's an insurance business there, you wouldn't have to have marine insurance to utilize that business. So you say, okay, you have limited use on Harbour Road for marine industrial, but restaurants are permitted. Well, there's been a restaurant there for decades and decades, the Blue Peter and the other one, and across the street now, we've had a cafe there for at least 25 years, I believe, and that sort of thing. Well, how is that marine industrial? It's not marine industrial. It's certainly complementary to the many, many workers that work in that area. It's very well appreciated and to the people who use the marinas, a berth in the marina, and visitors and otherwise. So I can remember the discussion over residential use on Harbour Road. And those strong advocates for marine industrial didn't want to see residential use. But then the rationale was, well, there may be a person operating a business and they wish to live on the property, or they may have somebody who needs to be a caretaker and be on the property, and that sort of thing. Well, that's a rational use, and so it came into the zoning that residential use could be permitted, but again, it was limited to a low number of units and that sort of thing. But now we see examples, and actually we see an example on this property. There's going to be no connection to the people, likely no connection to the people living in in the condos that are there and the storage areas. I mean, maybe somebody who has one of the 22 marina slips and that sort of thing, but it doesn't have to be. So what I'm getting at is that there's these non-marine industrial uses that have evolved along with the successful involvement of the district as a marine industrial. There's a massage, therapy clinic in the W1 zone. Again, it seemed rational to go ahead and zone the south side as W1U to allow office uses, but quite frankly, as we've indicated, we've seen tonight, or we've seen even before tonight, you have almost 100% of that. When you look at never mind the retail space on the corner of Resthaven and Harbour Road, but you look at the residential, you look at the Parks Canada, and you look at the boatyard, that's taking up the vast amount of that area. The likelihood that that's going to transition into office space and retail spaces is extremely unlikely. And so I think the area has thrived with some non-industrial uses there that have gained rationale over time. And a question I would ask is, how long would we leave this property vacant? And so, and do we want to go with the alternative that the proponent is suggesting their plan B is to have it shut-in storage? That doesn't have any presence on Harbour Road. It's not attractive to the area. And so I'm in favor of considering an option and gaining further input from the operators on Harbour Road. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm not going to repeat what the Mayor's just said, but similar comments relative to that. And I think where I lay right now is just, I'm concerned about the impact, both of what's happening with it empty and what's happening if we change it. And I think the only reasonable answer to that is to seek more information. And I think, as Councilor O'Toole has pointed out, an alternate motion to that effect to just get more input. And as the mayor said, I would have expected more feedback from the inhabitants in that zone, both working and residential, as to what the needs may be there, what they are. And I think it has to be marine related, but that could be, as there is across the street, a physiotherapist, or across the street is a cafe. Those are all viable operations. So I'd like to hear more on this, and at this point, I will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've personally given this a lot of thought. I think staff made a very strong case towards their recommendation of denying the application. And we have made a decision, I think it's in our strategic plan, to support the blue economy. And I think one way of doing that would be to ensure that our marine industrial areas remain marine industrial areas. I'm not convinced that that going to the alternate process will yield the kind of benefits that perhaps we're thinking about. At the same time, an outright denial of the application is a rather blunt tool, and I guess if the motion did pass, we would get a motion arising which would bring back some sort of review of this. I think I won't support the motion, but I'll give you my reasons. I think the developer does have to take some responsibility. After all, those uses were in place at the time that the site was purchased, and at the time that the building permits and development permits were issued. He made a conscious decision to build a building of that type with those particular spaces. Whether or not there was enough of a marketing study or viability study to determine whether or not those spaces could be either leased or sold is outside of the scope of my expertise. However, I think the results kind of speak for themselves. That being said, I'm prepared to see this go to the public. I would personally would like to see it remain as a marine only site or zoning area. I think the definition of what is marine related is broad, and as Ms. Verhagen stated, we don't have a precise definition of exactly what that means. Medical offices, I would have to say, don't quite fall into that category. However, there certainly are plenty of retail establishments that, I mean, the mayor spoke to that, and some of my colleagues as well, where retailers could cater partially to the marine sector and partially to other sectors, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I think, again, just going at it with a blunt instrument and saying no is maybe not the best approach. So I won't support this, and we'll see what kind of motion arising comes from this. Is there anybody who wishes to speak a second time on this item before we call the question? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thanks. I guess in regards to some comments made about, the reality is there's this building that is half full and it doesn't benefit the town, and I agree with that. However, what I'm concerned about is that we are changing the vision for our community based on current economic conditions. Yes, there's a recession. We're seeing that in the residential area as well, and that we would throw away and disregard what we wanted for that area just because of this particular development. So that's a big concern for me. It sounds like the motion will fail anyways, and if I hope that we will hear more from the community, but I'm really concerned about making a short-term decision that will impact the long-term vision of that particular area of the town. Thanks.
Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? We'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillors Duck, Duncan, Rintoul, Mayor McNeil Smith, and Councillor Novak are opposed. Councillor Rintoul.
I'm prepared to move option 2 from the staff report, that staff prepare a zoning amendment bylaw for zoning amendment application number RZ100115, and that the bylaw be brought before council for consideration of first and second readings.
Point of privilege, Chair.
Go ahead.
If the mover could seek clarification whether this zoning amendment would be to the entire zone or site size and accessory specific, as the proponent indicated they were requesting.
Yeah, my intent in moving the motion is keeping with the request from the applicant.
So can I assume that would be site specific?
So if I can, I'll turn to a nod from the applicant. So I heard the terms site, size, and accessory specific. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. I heard my colleagues who were, perhaps suggesting, the opportunity for some more input on this, be it with the industrial community, along Harbour Road directly, or with the broader community. This process, as staff noted during the question and answer, will indeed provide opportunity for that. So this is not ensuring that we move forward with this. It gives us the opportunity to review this zoning amendment bylaw. It provides the opportunity as well for consultation and input as a part of that process. So I'm supportive in seeing this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor?
Thank you. I'll concur with Councillor Rintoul. I won't repeat those points, but I do want to speak to Councillor O'Keefe's point with regards to it changing the vision we've had over the long term, and that is a concern. And I think Van Isle Marina has spoken very eloquently on the topic in their letter of submission. This limits it to a degree today in terms of being site, size, accessory specific. One could argue that, well, then we're just setting a precedent and other applicants could come forward. We've had unique applications in a number of areas, and council has made decisions on both sides based on the considerations. And I think we're dealing with unique circumstances in this particular application, and that we would want to consider any future applications. But with many of the long-term owners on Harbour Road who run industrial marine businesses, do we actually, because of this precedent, if it's termed as that we're setting, do we see those businesses coming forward to change current uses that they have as marine industrial to such limited office uses? I just don't see that necessarily happening. But again, the letter of submission was very eloquent in terms of the background and the context of that, and I want to acknowledge it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Just a clarification, if I may. Did the motion direct staff then to schedule a public hearing on the bylaw? I didn't hear that included.
Through the chair, no, I didn't, because during Q&A we were told that's going to happen anyways.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because in the staff it said, and whether to schedule a public hearing. So that's why I wondered whether staff needed specific direction in the motion.
We can turn to Ms. Verhagen for clarification.
Sure, thank you. I would defer to Mr. Edwards if he would rather speak to this, but I think that council would give direction to staff to do that plan for the public hearing after you make a resolution to give the bylaw second reading. But, thank you.
Okay. You still have the floor, Councillor? You're done? Who's next? Councillor Garnett? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I will continue to not support, I won't support this motion. We want to gain more information, want to hear from the public. That's exactly what the OCP and zoning bylaw processes were, and they were just done a very short time ago, and we heard from individuals in our community and from that sector what they wanted, so I won't support it. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to go forward with this. I think it's important because we did have a staff recommendation, which was to deny, and then council went differently, that to make clear to the public, I feel there's a kind of the disconnect between what an OCP is and what public feedback is and what it's for and what it can tell you and what it can't do. And I feel when the applicant kind of summarized that as, you know, where reality kind of intervened. And it's one thing to have a vision and say, this is kind of what we overall want for a space, and then kind of put that forward. But then reality has to get its say, and reality got its say. And then we have to figure out, how do we adapt to reality then, while maintaining the broadest high-level vision? How do we make, you know, we have to meet reality part way. And so I don't want this to be portrayed, and as you know, the mayor pointed out, Van Al brought forward the kind of concerns that went into the OCP, in which we heard at that time. However, and so it's always good to say, why did we pick this in the first place? How are we holding to it? And that's very much staff's job, is to be very familiar with, you know, our process and our bylaws and how that works. And then it's also the job for when the people who are actually owning those buildings, building those buildings, trying to sell those buildings, to say, but this is how reality is actually working in this space. This piece of reality says, here's your feedback on how that worked. I would be very concerned if we came out to another public process and people simply said, but I wanted it this way and our vision was this. That's not going to be helpful, because reality still has to have its say. I'm sure the architects who built the building that we must build a new retaining wall for did not envision that the bank would fail, and yet it did. And so the vision had to change. And the vision of keeping people in those homes rather than falling into the sea is still being met. But some of the architecture down below had to change. And so this is what we're going to be looking for, right? That we want this to remain a working harbor neighborhood, but some of how that gets done might need to be changed a bit. And, you know, it's good to hear what the constraints are. It's good to hear how there might be unintended consequences ahead of time. But to simply say that because something that was on paper is now changing on paper means a change in the vision, I think would be inaccurate. And I think that would be a wrong way to have the approach. One thing I was reminded of today was when the downtown waterfront vision involved a 2-story building on the pier with a living room and fireplace. Remember, that was one of the the things that could be rebuilt on the Beacon Wharf, which was wildly impractical when we actually looked at it. Somebody had a vision of what they thought might be cool, but just because there's a vision doesn't mean it can be practical, and reality has to have its say.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. When I think about reality, there's more than one way to look at reality. And what I'm concerned in terms of how far you want to take it. So for example, yes, it is true that in this particular period that we're in, that our economy is in a bit of a slump.
Point of order, I don't know that this is, I mean, just
What's your point of order?
my point of order is that she's simply rebutting my definition of reality rather than, I was just kind of making a point about the public feedback process. If she would like to make a point about the public feedback process rather than telling me my version of reality is wrong.
Apologies for that. I'll rephrase.
Can I just ask you to motivate on the
Yeah.
question?
So in terms of what I think the public wants from us, in terms of long-term vision, is to be thinking long-term. And I think what the community would see is that we are currently in a situation where there's a number of industries in a slump. The residential housing industry also. There's developers going bankrupt who have put money invested into certain building forms that aren't working out because of the environment that we're in right now. But for me, and I think what the public would expect from us, is to take a longer-term vision. And for me, I don't think that we're in a situation where these conditions are conditions, in my mind, that will change. And I think the community will be wanting us to take that long-term vision and not be taking a quick fix solution and compromising our vision for a particular area based on the experience of one developer who maybe could have anticipated this better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair. I will support this motion, as I said in my, in the previous motion that was failed, is that I want to understand more of the impact. We've heard from each of the occupants of the land, both east and west, north and east and west of this property, in Van Isle and Vector, one supporting it, one opposing. So there are multiple opinions out there, and I think we need to hear from that community. And the other part is that I think we do look to the future when we're looking at this, because we make it a more viable neighborhood. We make it a walkable neighborhood, and that is important as well as we look, and we'll address this in West Sydney, we'll address this in other areas of town where we want to create a walkable community. And I think this is one way to find out from the occupants, the residents of that community, both industrial and residential people that stay there, what are the services that they need in this area. As is defined by the zoning right now, we have on one side we allow medical and convenience and cafes, on the other side we don't. Does that make sense for this community? Does that ensure long-term survival of this neighborhood? As was pointed out by my colleagues and the proponent, the south side of this road is unlikely to change in the next 40 to 50 years, with the boatyard being there, with Gulf Island's parking lot, with the 2 residential units and the convenience store. Unlikely to change. And so how do we continue to make this a viable neighborhood and a livable neighborhood? Certainly on that impact, I want to hear on the other side too, what are the negative impacts, because I've understood that the construction of this building has impacted the assessments of the occupants on that side, and they're now looking at how they challenged their assessment relative to this improvement. Whether that's true or not, I've just heard that from, directly from the occupants on that south. So I think my interest is to find out more, to hear more, to make a decision, because I think both opportunities that we have defined here tonight are viable. And I think we need to hear more from the people that live there and work there. Thank you.
Thank you. I will support this at this time. And like my colleagues, I want to hear what the public has to say. The simple fact that we're going to ask the staff to prepare a building-specific zoning amendment bylaw does not mean that it's going to go through. It simply means that we're going to have this bylaw in front of us. It'll go through a couple of readings, and then we'll have a public discussion about it. And at that point, the decision can be made whether to allow it or disallow it. If there are no other speakers, I'm prepared to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Garnett opposed. Thank you very much.
Point of order.
Yes. go
May I
ahead.
suggest a short break?
We will take a 10-minute recess, resume at 8 o'clock. right, since we're all back, we'll come to order and resume with item 8A, and we'll turn to Mr. Hissick for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Shortly after our budget is approved each year, we consider our community grant applications. The town's budget for grants and aid to community organizations is quite modest at $20,000. But our annual community support budget has now grown to over 1.35 million, which includes several long-time grant applicants being added to our core budget over the years. In addition to our own budget and our grant process, we support many sports and recreation organizations by providing facilities through Panorama. And we've also worked with Artsy to support a local arts grant program. So there are many organizations in the community providing important services, but we always receive more requests than we can accommodate with our modest budget. Tried to give a brief overview of the process in the staff report, but one thing that should be kept paramount is we should identify any potential conflicts of interest before we begin, so we know when certain members of council might need to leave the room while discussing those particular organizations. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. And on the basis of your timely recommendation, I'll ask council if there are any conflicts for the list of grants in aid that have been provided. I will start with one. I have a conflict with the Saanich Peninsula Folk and Fiddle Festival Society. It's a mouthful. Is there anybody else with conflict? Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Sydney Guide and Scout Hall as usual, even though I'm no longer a guider, my daughter is there. And the Circular Farm and Food Society, I have plots in the gardens there, so.
Plots, okay. Typically what we do is we'll work on the items with conflicts first, and so I'll turn the gavel over to the mayor for at least the first one of mine, and I will be outside.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the chair who's just left. We'll first consider the Saanich Peninsula Folk and Fiddle Festival Society. If there's a recommendation, Councillor O'Keefe, please.
I move that we deny the requests from the Saanich Peninsula Folk and Fiddle.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
Although I think this is a great event, and I wish them every success. However, this is an arts and culture event, and council made the decision a couple years ago to fund arts and culture events through Artsy. So Artsy has a pocket of money that these folks can apply to, and I see on their application that they have applied. So it would be in effect double dipping if we were to give them funds and then they were to go to Artsy and get funds as well. So that's my rationale for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garnett? Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. I'll just call the chair back in. Chair, just before I turn the floor back to you, I'll just note that the application was denied for Saanich Peninsula Folk and Fiddle Society.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan. I do that. Thank you. Let us start with the Circular Farm and Food Society. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I move that we allow the $3,000 for the Circular Farm and Food Society.
Is there a seconder?
A second for discussion.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. The reason I think this is a good idea is because this involves providing community gardens to individuals related to food security. And the issue of community gardens was something that many of you may recall came up a couple years ago. There's high level of interest, and community members came to council asking us to provide funding to set up community gardens. They worked with staff to try and locate space. And what we had said at the time is we'd like to support it if there was an organization that had the space and could organize this sort of thing. So here's an organization that is doing that. It's just across the highway in North Saanich. And as they've said in their report, that 67% of the existing members are from Sydney. So because this was something that we had wanted to support in the past, I think this is a good opportunity to do that.
Councillor Rintoul.
Could I just ask the mover to clarify something?
Sure.
Beg your pardon, did you say this is something we wanted to support in the past? Is that what you said?
Community gardens.
Oh, the general concept, not, I got it.
Yes, sorry, no, the general concept of community gardens in Sydney.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm receptive to this, but not at this amount, and I would prefer to circle back to it later. I recognize Councillor Duncan is out of the room at the moment, but given the amount of this, I'm not supportive at this point. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor. Sorry, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, that was precisely my, you stole the words out of my mouth. I had them down as being supportive because for all the reasons you said, but I just, they were kind of the group I went to at the very end to see how much money we had left, wanting to support them, but thinking there's others that are more higher on my priority. So if we could revisit it, I would be supportive of that. Thank you.
Mayor. Nothing? Okay, nobody else? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, in the interest of being able to move it ahead, whether council member would care to propose an alternate figure, which in the past what we've done is come up with some sort of amount, and then at the end, if we found that there was more, we could add to it. So just putting that out there as an option if someone would care to offer an amendment.
Mayor.
Not willing to offer an amendment, but I do wish to comment, and that is, this is the first one we're considering, and it's really hard to decide it, for me to determine at this point, what other amount I would feel comfortable with, and so I would just be picking a number out of the air, and I think we might be likely coming back to it in any event.
Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I'm for deferring this as well. I'm just going to, it says that they've gotten $3,000, or they're requesting from the District of North Saanich, and yet that is unconfirmed at this point. And the total budget being 11,000, and they're asking for us to front 25 to 30%, or 20 to 25% of it, and I'm not prepared, given that we have a pot of $20,000 to give such a large sum as Councilor Rintoul indicated. And I would prefer to defer this to see what we have left. Further to that, I understand where the District of North Saanich is coming. This is on their lands and their property, and they're giving substantial funding. So I think we should wait on it and see what we have available as not a critical demand for our community. Thank you.
So just as a reminder, the motion is...
Point of order. Sorry, point of privilege. I would move to table.
Second.
Okay.
No motivation.
Do we have to call that? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. So, circular farm and food is tabled. Does that mean we bring it back at the end?
Later, at some point.
Okay. All right. The second item that Councillor Duncan is out for is Sydney Guide and Scout Hall Society. Councillor Rintoul.
Move $1,000 from Grant Aid.
Second.
Councillor Duck, second. Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you. Regularly funded, we're familiar with the organization. It's a reasonable amount in my mind. Thank you.
Councillor Duck?
Nothing to add.
Councillor O'Keefe? Nothing? We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None. None opposed. It's carried. Okay, so now that we've got the conflicts out of the way, I guess we can just start at the very top.
Point of privilege,
Yes,
Chair?
Go ahead.
If I might, just an update to the returning councillor that we did approve Sydney Scout and Guide Hall for $1,000, and we tabled the discussion on Circular Fireman Society, so we will be coming back to that at some point later in the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. As mentioned, we'll continue from the top, one at a time. We'll start with Capital Bike. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I move that we deny the request from Capital Bike for $3,500.
Second.
And motivation is, they do great work, but as staff have advised us this afternoon, we've already provided funding of $7,000 in our budget for Capital Bike. So I think we've covered off support for them quite well for the coming year.
Nothing? Anybody else? Mayor?
Thank you, and thank you for the question from a colleague to staff today that clarified that. And I'm sorry, I did read the email, but I'm not recalling a particular point, and that is the $7,000 that is in the budget. Is that part of the overall summer market budget?
Through the chair to Mayor McNeil-Smith, there's $7,000 for Go By Bike Weeks, and there's another allocation for the bike valet for the market and other major events.
Sorry, how did council come to the decision to support Bike Week?
That's been an ongoing program through the LGCAP funding over the last few years.
So it's in effect a line item?
Well, we have the funding, yes.
Sorry, is the funding coming from taxes?
No, it's not. It's through the provincial LGCAP grant that we've been getting over the last several years.
Thank you for reminding me on that.
All right, so the motion is for Capital Bike to be denied. All in favor? None opposed, it carries. Next item is Kids Sport Greater Victoria. Councillor Rintoul.
I'll move that Kids Sport Greater Victoria grant and aid application be denied.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Rintoul, motivate.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just in review of the application itself, I mean, I certainly appreciate the work that is done here, and I know that it benefits this community, and there's a footnote at the bottom that talks about specifically how this would apply to, you know, kids in Sydney. But when I look at the overall project value identified here is, you know, $550,000, and the types of the you know, grant support that they're seeking from other levels of government. And you know, we didn't receive financial statements, we didn't receive a budget, you know, for that type of program. While I'm appreciative, I'm not convinced that our $5,000 is making a difference to the success of this program, with my appreciation for the work that they do. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. Similar comments. I noted, yeah, it's great what they're doing to get kids involved in sports. But things that stood out for me is no financial need demonstrated. We apparently provided some funds in 2021. It would have been good to have a bit more info on how those were used. So yeah, the financial aspect was a concern for me. And I know that a lot of youth sports organizations on the peninsula do have programs in place to support families who can't afford the fees. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Chair. I won't support the motion. I would have been happy to have provided some amount just to contribute to it. And I think we've just spoke to this earlier on a development. The economic conditions are difficult for many members in our community, and although some organizations are in the position financially to help with the less fortunate in providing fee waivers, not all are, and they will be struggling for fees themselves. So I think as a body, I think it would be important to support our local organizations in this way. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Duncan?
I will note that I felt the same way. I would have preferred to table this one and come back to it later and see if we'd had money at the end that we could throw them. But if it's denied and we have money at the end, I guess we always have the opportunity to pull one back. So.
Anybody else? So the motion on the floor is for...
Point of procedure. Motion to table.
Second. Okay, discussion?
No, I agree with my colleague here. I think this is worthy of further consideration, and I think if we have available funds, then we look at that. But I think we need to address some of the other requests that are more pertinent to Sydney, and if there's funds remaining, then I would appreciate going back to this for reconsideration at a lesser amount.
Mayor? Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? Councillor Rintoul, Councillor O'Keefe opposed. I'm in favor. So the motion carries. So that will be tabled till the end of the meeting. Next item is Sydney Lawn Bowling. Councillor Duncan?
I'd move that we give the $1,500 as requested to Sydney Lawn Bowling.
Second.
Okay, go ahead. Councillor Duncan.
You know, as staff noted, we do give them usually a grant almost every year, I think, for the past few years for some sort of repair work on the property. But I feel this falls within kind of that, they have a specific ask, so we know what it's going towards, and it's for something that is kind of maintenance of capital infrastructure that the town has an interest in as well.
Councillor Rintoul?
Yeah, no, thank you. I concur. I mean, we can see the project estimated costs here exceed the amount of what they're requesting. So they're obviously looking to fund this through some other mechanisms, be it fundraising or their internal revenue sources. So I'm supportive. Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you. My first comment is that I would prefer to have stayed at 1,000, but I'm not going to make an amendment at this point. It's just the way my math works out so far, but or coming into the meeting. But at any rate, through you, Chair, I have a question from staff. In their application, they say the intended use of funds to repair the Sydney Lawn Bowling Club driveway and parking lot, which was damaged due to the construction of the new condo building next door. In projects such as that, I mean, the fence came down, the driveway was accessed, and so on. Is that the condo applicant or the condo builder would be required to restore the property that they disturbed back to its same condition pre-construction? Are we aware of that? I mean, I have a concern with us picking up a cost that should have been covered, potentially covered, or are we aware that they're looking to improve the condition of their driveway, their gate, their driveway, and their parking lot above what it was pre-condo development?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This goes back to their request last year where I tried to get that clarification from them, and it was still unclear to me. It was staff's expectation that it would be restored to original condition, but perhaps you are correct in that they're looking to go beyond that. I know the development is complete. I would think if it hasn't been restored yet, it's not going to be at this point, and there's no proper mechanism to ensure it because there was no deposit taken for that, and the club did not charge any kind of rent for use of their property, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. I do recall asking the question, but I didn't recall the answer, so thank you for that. I'm still in favor of 1,000, but I'm willing to listen to others. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'm actually, as much as I like the Sydney Lawn Bowling Club, I'm not in favor of funding this. As has been mentioned, this is apparently, as I stated in the report, lot repairs resulting from the construction of the condo next door. And whether the developer should have done it or not, or whether we should have followed up, I don't know. But I'm uncomfortable asking Sydney taxpayers to fund that. If I think they should be talking to the people next door. The other thing that I note is that when I'm looking at all of these requests, all of them are good things. And so what I'm looking at is there a financial need? And when I look at their financial statement, they didn't provide a lot of information, but what I did see is that they showed interest income of over $8,000 on their income statement. So they didn't provide a balance sheet that I could see, but I presume if they've got that amount of interest income that they have some savings. So it's not clear to me that there is a financial need, and it seems to me that they should be able to cover this. It's also something that I think, organizations that have property should be making provision for such things in a capital improvement reserve fund, and getting their members to cover that rather than asking taxpayers to pick that up. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, the motion's on the, Councillor Garnett.
Just seeking clarification through to staff. This is Town of Sydney property, is it not?
No, I believe it's CRD property. It's
okay.
in conjunction with the facility they have in front, and it's leased.
Right, okay.
Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And just looking at the historical street view from 2021 to 2025, there doesn't appear to be any significant difference in the driveway. The condition doesn't seem to have been dramatically altered in a negative way, just from that imagery. I do know that the developer did restore the fence and the gate that was impacted, but I don't know the details about the actual driveway other than what you can see on the street view images.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor, and the motion is to provide Sydney Lawn Bowling with $1,500. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Duck, Councillor O'Keefe, and Mayor McNeil-Smith opposed. Motion carries. Next item is Friends of St. Andrew. Councillor O'Keefe.
I'll move that we approve $4,500 for Friends of St. Andrews.
Second.
Okay, we have moved and seconded. Councillor O'Keefe.
Sure. I realize it's one of the bigger requests, but I was appreciative of Mr. Head coming forward tonight to explain a bit more of the current circumstances and concerns about, they're now providing more support for people. Running out of food is a concern. The programs and I know that they do receive a property tax exemption, but so do all the other churches in the town. St. Andrew's is really the only one that provides such a wide range of services, not just to the unhoused people, but to seniors and others as well. Their lunches on Wednesdays are well attended. They're always packed full. A lot of seniors as well as unhoused people as well. So they provide that opportunity for sense of connection and combating loneliness. And then the outreach that they do with the meals that they prepare and then actually take out to people. And then the services they provide to folks who getting them, linking them up with medical appointments, housing, and that sort of thing. So it's one of the few things on our list that really go towards supporting those who are truly in need, rather than organizations that are supporting still good things, but things that I look at as more sort of recreational in nature. So for that reason, I think it's a good investment, and I think taxpayers would be okay with us contributing that amount.
Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think their service, fills a void in the community, and in that sense, it's important. I think the town has supported their requests for a number of years now. With that in mind, I would prefer to see a little more information from them with regard to financial statements and a more fulsome budget picture to illustrate a little more detail. And I say that respectfully just because they've been funded for a number of years, and they're not stepping away from this. It's a going concern for them, and they're committed to it. And so I just would like to know the depth of their operation. The speaker coming forward this evening was very helpful as well for myself. To clarify that if nothing else, they're seeing nothing but increased demand for provision of assistance of this nature. So I'm happy to support the request for $4,500. Thank you.
Councillor Duck?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. It's an important service in our community, and certainly they've been a leader in establishing an emergency cold weather shelter and have done a lot of work in that. And as Councillor Keefe mentioned, they're not only supporting the unhoused, they're supporting those in the community that are disconnected from our community, not necessarily unhoused, but are lonely, are seeking just community to engage with. And I think that their lunches do provide that to a lot of people. I've attended them on occasion and have seen the benefit they bring in bringing people around a table and having that conversation. The only concern I have at this point is I don't know if our budget can afford this 20% to one request. So I'm hesitant to give the full 4,500. Thank you.
If there's no other comments, we'll call the question, and this one is to approve $4,500 to Friends of St. Andrew. All in favor? None opposed. Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is Need to Crisis Intervention and Public Information Society. Councillor Duncan.
I'll move to deny this one. The Need to Crisis Intervention and Public Info Society.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
And I know we normally do fund this one. However, we have a number of large requests that are, specifically. I'm looking at. We still have St. Andrew's Abbeyfield, which is a very large request as well. And while this one is a worthy cause and we've always funded it, it's a kind of a large distributed organization, and again, this would be the kind of one where our funding probably isn't a very large part of what they're going to be needing, whereas we have other organizations that are specific to Sydney and kind of specifically within our kind of bailiwick where we help maintain the capital infrastructure. And so I just saw the other ones with big amounts still below that I think are just more appropriate for our grants at this time.
Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask a question through you of staff, just to ensure I'm reading their financial statement correctly, Mr. Hessick, but do I understand correctly on their financial statement, which this is an income statement to me, it's labeled here as statement of operations, that they're showing their 2025 year-end income statement as having revenue over expenses of $1,345?
I see the same number there, yes.
Okay. So to me, that means they, I realize they've got cash in the bank, they've got cash on hand. To me, given the subject matter, I'd prefer to see us support it. So if we need to circle back to it, I guess I'd be comfortable with it. But in that we've supported them, I think fairly consistently and passed by my recollection, they've provided us with their financials and their budget. And given the subject matter of youth in crisis and its suicide prevention, I know we all, as Councillor Duncan noted, are supportive of this and would like to continue to be. I don't think I'll support the motion that's on the floor before us, because I would like to definitely see us support this organization to some level, and I'd be happy at the $3,500, but I would also entertain thoughts of committee on that. So I'll leave my comments there, Chair.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'd also like to see us support this, so I won't support the current motion on the floor. When I look at their financial statements, a couple things kind of rang it out to me is if you look at their, it seems like their revenues from last year to 2025, it seems have declined, which is getting common with a lot of organizations. The other thing that I'm looking at when I look at these applications is how critical are they? So you've got something like this that I believe is a real needed thing in our community, providing this sort of mental health support to youth. And there's been lots of in the media about that. Also, it's something that I hear at the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, about the need for these sorts of supports in our community. It'd be nicer if there was something specifically in Sydney, but the reality is that crisis centers can operate more efficiently when they're sort of more broadly based. So I think there's a real need for it, and I think it's one of those things that we should continue to support. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you, and I won't support the motion. I think we should support them to some level, and just an observation that some have spoken to in some ways, but want to add to it is that 9 municipalities have supported this. The applications are pending, but when I've looked at these applications in previous years, you have the majority of municipalities supporting this, and while the levels differ, Saanich is at 10,000, Langford's at 8,000, it's not out of line, for the request that they've made to us. And so I would like to consider it. The other is that in terms of need, it's been highlighted, well, I don't know if we mentioned the exact figure, but the revenue in 25 was 445,000. And interestingly, as Councillor Rintoul clarified, they only had a surplus of, or an excess of on a cash basis of $1,300. So they are operating pretty close to the margins here. And if you look at the back page, not only are they putting applications out to the municipalities, but they've got another 10 organizations, United Way, Children's Foundation, Coast Capital, all Victoria Foundation, gaming grant, and these are all significant amounts. Any one of them doesn't come through, and you know, they're even closer to the margins. I guess the biggest disappointment is near the top is Island Health is you know, not funding it, and you know, this is kind of a critical health service in our communities. So, and my preference would be to stay with 3,000. If we go back to 2021, pardon me, if we go back to 2021, they requested 700 and we gave it. In 22, the 1,800 and we gave it. 23, 3,000 we gave it. 24, they requested for 3,500, but we gave 3,000. Last year, we did meet the request of 3,500, but I think 2,500 or 3,000 would be more in keeping, and is where my math is on the overall candidate or overall amounts. But the motion isn't to discuss the amount or to discuss an amount at this point. So I'll leave my comments there.
Anybody else who wish to speak to the motion? So the motion on the floor is to deny funding. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Mayor McNeil Smith, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor O'Toole, Councillor Novak, Councillor Garnett. Councillor O'Toole.
I'll move that $3,000 from grant and aid be awarded to Need to Crisis Intervention.
Second.
Okay, Councillor O'Toole.
Nothing further.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Nothing further.
Anybody else wish to speak to it? Councillor Duncan.
Just should probably be clear for the record, it's not that I'm against helping children who are suicidal. It's simply that I would think that the reason, for one thing, VHA doesn't help fund these people is that this money won't actually help give children the idea that they will have a future, let alone one worth living. I don't think this is a good use of taxpayer money, but I'm sure it will make people feel better.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? We'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. We'll move to Rewired Recovery Foundation, Soberfest.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
If we could just get a running total from our CFO, I think we're at about 10, but just wanted to confirm.
Yes, Councillor, we're at exactly 10,000.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'll move that we deny the request from Rewired Recovery Fest for $5,000.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor O'Keefe.
So my rationale in this is when I look at what it, I think the organization, it looks like they do good work. However, this particular request is to fund a music festival. So I would categorize this more as a arts and culture, not a social services. They're doing this as a fundraiser to raise funds. And when I look at their income from the event for last year, it looks to me that their net income for last year was only $6,500. And I presume they have other sources. If they had come to us asking for a direct donation to support services, I might be more inclined to support that. But this is what they're organizing. It's a music festival. There's going to be a children's play area, bands, museum, or not museum, just activities for kids. It's taking place in Langford. There's no indication how this event would support Sydney residents, but basically it's a music festival. So I don't see a point in supporting this event in Langford. Thank you.
Councillor O'Toole.
Nothing further.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Okay, the motion on the floor is to deny funding to Soberfest. All in favor? Any opposed? Were you in favor, Mayor? Or are you? I'm in favor. Okay. Motion carries unanimously. And the next item is St. Andrew's Abbeyfield Housing Society. They have a request for $5,000, the first time applying, and they're property tax exempt. Councillor O'Keefe.
I'll move that we deny their requests to Abbey Field for $5,000.
Second.
So I think Abbey Field is a wonderful facility. Many of us has been there to their Christmas soirees. And Sydney taxpayers do support them with an exemption from paying property taxes. But I'm less comfortable having Sydney taxpayers funding kitchen renovations, which is really essentially a private residence for those people that live there. I think this is something that should be made, there should be provision for in a replacement reserve. And I actually, when I see and reviewed their submission financial statements, they do have a society fund, a housing fund, and a replacement reserve fund, which is required by BC Housing. And there's $142,000 in that. The cost of the project is estimated to be about 27 to 30K. So it seems that they have the money available. And their letter didn't really make reference to financial need and as to why they can't fund that from their existing funds and reserves, and instead asking Sydney taxpayers to foot the bill for that.
Councillor Rintoul.
Nothing further.
Anybody wish to speak to this? And the motion on the floor then is for the St. Andrews Abbeyfield Housing Society request for $5,000 be denied. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is, we're into environmental services. This is the Compost Education Center. They're asking for $3,000. Councillor O'Keefe.
I'll move that we deny the request to Compost Education Center for $3,000.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor O'Keefe.
Again, another good idea. It sounds like a good program to increase the number of child and youth workshops for Sydney youth. It involves worm composting and waste reduction in the classroom. However, they didn't provide any info on how many Sydney students would benefit. We provided 500 last year, so they could have at least mentioned the results of that. No financial information provided, and no info provided from the schools on the value of the program. So I would have been more inclined to support if there had been some letters from local teachers from Sydney School or the PAC are saying what a good program this is, but that's missing, and I think it's kind of incumbent upon them to make their case if they want $3,000 from taxpayers of Sydney. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Nothing to add.
Anybody wish to speak? Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I won't support the motion. I remember motivating strenuously for $500 last year. I think we had more information than this, quite frankly. I think it named the number of students, or gave a number of students that benefited. So I'm a bit surprised that their application was thinner this year. I don't have the application for last year, but you know, from what I saw last year, and I would only infer if they're continuing the program that they've been doing from quite some, that there is benefit to Sydney students.
Anybody else wish to speak?
So if this motion were not to pass, I would put forward a motion for $500.
Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I won't be supporting this motion for some of the similar reasons. Is that we gave them money last year. I'd like to know how that was spent, what was the benefit to the community. We see that from other applicants, and so this seems a little thin to me. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? The motion on the floor is to deny the funding of $3,000 for the Compost Education Center. All in favor? Opposed? Mayor McNeil Smith is opposed. Motion arising? Is that even possible? Not possible? Denied it, okay. I guess we can come back to it if there's money at the end. All right, we'll keep it. Okay, we'll put a star beside the name. The next one is Friends of Sydney Parks, and the request is for $1,600, and it's a first-time application. Councillor Garnett?
I'll move that we fund the, support the request from Friends of Sydney Parks for $1,600.
Second.
Second by Councillor Duck. Go ahead, Councillor
Thank you,
Garnett.
Chair. Yeah, no, this is a group that's come forward. They're going to provide great benefit to the community in our parks, which is something that actually aids our staff who can't get to the nitty-gritty a lot of the time. So, you know, I'm just very appreciative again of them wanting to come forward with this. And I think as a starting venture, we should do all we can to help support them and get them off the ground in a positive foot. Thank you.
Councillor Duck?
Yeah, I agree, and certainly they've demonstrated the support for the program going forward and being involved in North District North Saanish's program. And in talking to one of the members, they'll be getting work parties jointly from North Saanich as well. So I think there's some benefit to those shared services. I think this is an effort that needs to get off the ground, and I think this is initial funding. I don't foresee that they'll need ongoing funding other than maybe minor tool replacement. So I think this is a good one to get going. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be very happy to support this, this motion and this organization. To me, this is kind of exactly the sort of thing that grant and aids are for, something that will provide wide benefit to the community, primarily volunteer run. They just need a little bit of money to start up. So it's good news all around. So yeah, happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else wish to comment? No. All right, we'll call the question, and this question, or this motion, is to provide Friends of Sydney Parks with $1,600. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And we will now move to the other category. The first item is Kitty Hawk, 676 Kitty Hawk Sponsoring Committee Society. They're funded regularly. Councillor O'Keefe.
I'll move that we approve $1,000 to Kitty Hawk Squadron.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Councillor O'Keefe, go ahead.
This is a long-term organization that we've provided for, so I'm happy to continue to support them.
Councillor Garnett. Nothing, no other comments? All right, we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move to Capital Region Food and Agricultural Initiatives. The request is for $500. Councillor O'Keefe.
I will move that we approve $500 to CR Fair. Oh, I said that we allow or we approve $500.
Second for discussion.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I think they're doing good work throughout the CRD to promote sustainable food systems. This is to fund an event that will be, across the CRD, I presume. But it's a nominal amount, $500. So I think it's worth supporting.
Sorry, who was the secretary on that? I think it was.
I was for
Councillor
discussion.
Ridgewell. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was not compelling for me, the movers,
I'll be more
motivation, so I'm inclined to not support the grant request. Thank you.
Councillor Duck.
Let's try to be brief.
I will be supporting this grant and aid. I think CR Fair is a recognized organization that is supporting agriculture and food sustainability across our region, and for this nominal amount, they're the provider, for example, Flavor Trail, which is an opportunity that in our community to see what we grow in this land. Sydney doesn't have a lot of farmland, and they're very actively involved in promoting our agricultural sustainability and moving it forward. And I think it's an important aspect. And for the small amount they're asking, I think that's worthy to show that we're interested in having them continue that effort. Thank you.
Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. I won't support the motion. We've, as it's indicated here, we have not approved any funding in the past for these requests, and I also note that we have 2 items that we've tabled that are fairly large asks, so I don't want to dip into what we have remaining for those discussions. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you. I won't. Sorry, thank you. I won't support it. I think Seafair does wonderful work around the region, but I just want to note, council or committee and council will recall that the CRD established a Foodlands Trust, and so you know, for food sustainability, and city residents are contributing to that as part of the new regional service that was established by the CRD in 2025 through their CRD requisition, not Sydney tax, not Sydney taxes.
Anybody else wish to speak? The motion is to approve $500 for Seafair. All in favor? 1 in favor. All opposed? Any opposed, rather. Mayor McNeil-Smith, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Rintoul, Councillor Novak, Councillor Garnett, Councillor Duncan. Opposed. The next item is circular farm and food we've tabled. So the next item is Farmlands Trust for Greater Victoria, and they have an ask of $5,000. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'll move that we deny the request from Farmlands Trust for $5,000.
Second.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Another good initiative focused on food security. They operate the Newman Farm in Central Saanich, and they provide produce to the Sydney Food Bank and to local First Nations. And if we had an unlimited amount of money, I'd be happy to support that. But I prefer to fund food security projects that are a little bit closer to home, like perhaps a circular farm and food, for example, is what I would prefer to support. Thanks.
Seconder was Councillor Duck.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead.
I know it's too late, but we shouldn't really be discussing that, given that the person who's supposed to be in a conflict is in the room.
Exactly. Sorry. Good point.
Thank you. Councillor Duck.
I concur with my colleagues.
Okay. So the motion on the floor for, I think we're at Farmlands Trust, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you. I won't support the motion, and this isn't contradictory with my remarks on the previous application, and that is that the CRD established a Foodlands Trust that Sydney residents are contributing to through the requisition. My reason for supporting a small amount to these folks is because they are providing to our local food bank. So it's of direct benefit to Sydney. And I had a tour of Newman Farms a few years ago, and it's remarkable the amount of food that they grow and contribute to the Sydney Food Bank and then others in Victoria.
Thank you, Mayor. So the motion on the floor is for Farmlands Trust to be denied the $5,000. All in favor of this motion? 2, 3, 4. Any opposed? Mayor McNeil-Smith and Councillor Rintoul are opposed. Motion carries. The next item is Fed Urban Agricultural Society, My Fed Farm. They have a request for $1,500. Councillor O'Keefe.
Okay.
Surprise.
I will recommend that we deny the request of $1,500 for Fed Urban Agriculture.
Second.
Okay, Councillor O'Keefe.
Again, another good organization focused on food security. For this is focused on providing garden kits to some of our First Nations, which I think is a good thing in terms of food security. But as I said earlier, I would like to support things that are a little bit closer to home. Thank you.
Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you. I'm having difficulty confirming sort of the financial position here. I know we've not supported them in past. So yeah, I'm just looking at their income statement, which their statement of cash flows, which doesn't seem to illustrate to support their ending position. So I'm inclined to support the motion that's before us. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment on this? The motion on the floor is to deny funding to Fed Urban Agriculture. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. The next item is the Navy League of Canada. They have a request for $1,000. They have been funded regularly. Anybody wish to?
I'll start it off just so we can go. I'll move that we approve the request of $1,000 for Navy League of Canada.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second? Second by Councillor Duncan. Councillor Garnett, go ahead.
No, we've regularly supported them. They do good work like all the other organizations, and there's nothing in here that shows me that they aren't worthy of still continuing. We get a budget, we get some financial statements, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Left it on, sorry, but yeah, I'll say we regularly fund them, and I see them kind of in the same category as the, Guidance Scout Hall, where it's one of those organizations that provides this ongoing activities that for the kids in the area. And I know that staff have noted they have no financial need. They have in past they're mentioning specific summer programs and things that they're adding to supplement this year. So again, I'm okay with continuing this, given that they've actually gone and said what this would be used for. So
anybody else wish to comment? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. This one is a little bit more of a question mark for me, because when I look at their financial statements, yeah, I don't see a financial need. I know that they're a little bit similar to other organizations, but where they're not similar is they have a source of revenue by they rent out their space for the daycare, so they have sort of a regular income stream. I also see that they've got, $24,000 in GICs, so they seem to be doing all right financially. So when I look at other organizations that demonstrate a bit more financial need, I'd rather put the money towards those rather than someone or an organization that doesn't necessarily have that need, even though we have supported them in the past.
Anybody else wish to comment? Mayor?
Sorry. Can I have the motion on the floor read again, please?
That the Navy League of Canada receive $1,000.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm in support of the motion. I'll note, and I think this has been the case in previous years, that both Central Saanich and North Saanich have funded to that same level as well. And we do have Sea Cadets here in Sydney. So I'll leave my comments there.
Any other comments? We'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Duck. That's carried. We'll now go to Parkland Parent Association. They have a request for $1,000 and they have been regularly funded in the past.
Point of privilege, Chair. If
Go ahead, Mayor.
staff could confirm that we're at 13.6.
That is correct. There are $6,400 remaining.
Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you. With the chair's indulgence, I would move that grant and aid in the amount of $750 be provided to Parkland Parent Association and the same amount to Stelly Secondary School Parents Dry Grad.
Second.
Okay, well, we have a seconder for both of those. I guess that's a single motion. But Councillor Rintoul?
Yes.
Point of privilege or order.
Or something.
Can I ask, can we not have those? I would prefer to vote on those separately. To break them out. To split it.
Then
To vote on Parkland separately and then vote on Stelly's
we can
separately.
split them so that we're
Okay.
basically going back to the very first, which is Parkland Parent Association.
Okay.
And so we have a motion to fund them to the extent of $750. Is that correct? Are you okay with that, mover?
I am.
Thank you. And the seconder was, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, the motion is now that it's $750, not the $1,000?
$750 for Parkland Parent, and the motion has been split for Stelly's.
Okay. I'm just moving it at the 1,000, but if 750 is what the mover agreed to too, then okay.
So are you seconding that, Councillor Duncan?
I already did.
Councillor Duck seconded it. Okay, thank you. Okay. So,
Was already on the floor.
Councillor Rintoul, go ahead.
Yeah, this was on the floor as $750, and all we've done is split it. So, yeah, I'm just looking at what we've done in past for Parkland, and my rationale was keeping it the same as Stelly's. Students from Sydney attend both schools. Nevertheless, I'm happy to support Parkland Parent Associates, $750 towards dry grad. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duck.
Nothing to add.
Councillor Duncan.
I would say I was going to support the 1,000. I know we did 750 last year because we had so many requests. We were finding ways to kind of shave bits off. But up until last year was the first year, I think, that we've ever only given them 750, and every year before that we've given Parkland 1,000. And Parkland is actually the school within our catchment area. I know that there are students that do go elsewhere because their parents drive down and they had room in that school, so they drop them off. But I'd much rather support to a greater degree the school that's specifically within our catchment area.
Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I would move amendment to from $750 to $1,000.
Second.
Okay, so we have
I'll motivate and to add to what the movers is. We've gone back and forth on Stelly's in Parkland every year, and I can remember, I think it was last year, we wound up in the end adding $50 or $25 for each of them, you know, doing this fine math and that sort of thing. When I look at the math of what we have left, we have 6,400 left, and the request has been for $1,000, and we have provided that level of support to Parkland in the past. I think it's reasonable. I support $1,000 this year to Parkland.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Duncan, do you wish to add?
Nothing further to add.
Nothing to add. Anybody else to speak? Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, I support.
On the amendment.
Yes, I support the amendment for the reasons that have been given. I'm not sure what we'll end up approving for Stelly's, but I think Parkland warrants a greater amount. While both high schools are in the Saanich Peninsula.
Point of order.
Mayor.
Okay, well, I'm in favor of $1,000 for Parkland, because I think that's where most of our students or attend school.
So, anybody else wish to speak to the amendment? So we'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? None. So we'll go back to the original motion, and the original motion was to provide Parkland Parent Association with $750. That's now been made $1,000. So, all in favor of the contribution to Parkland? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. Okay, good. We got that.
I'll
And that's
continue, if I
1,000.
may, and move Stelly Secondary School receive $750 grant aid.
Second?
Okay.
So this is in
Councillor
keeping
Mitchell.
with their request, it's in keeping with what we've done in past. It is in our catchment. The students from Sydney who are in French immersion go to Parkland because that's where they're sent to go by SD 63. So those are Sydney students. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan? Nothing further? Okay, anybody else wish to speak to this? The motion on the floor is to provide $750 to Stelly Secondary School Parents Dry Grad. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So Stelly's gets $750. We're now pretty much at the end of the requests. We still have some items in the other category where there were donations in previous years, but there are no requests for 2026. So I'll ask Mr. Hissick what our current balance of contributions or donations are.
The remaining funds are $4,650.
4,600 and 50. 4,650, is that correct? Thank you. Okay. I'll open it to the floor for any remaining motions on the other categories.
Chair,
Yes.
there are two items that were tabled.
Yes, we'll come to those after I get to
Okay.
the bottom of the list and make sure everything. That's all that's left. Okay, there's nothing else. Okay, so, all right, then let's go back to the first one that has been tabled, and that is the Circular Farm and Food Society. And Councillor Duncan will make a hasty exit. Do we need to? She's gone, okay. Anybody wish to? Mayor McNeil-Smith.
I'll move that we grant the request of $3,000.
Second?
To
you,
motivate,
Mayor.
while we have funds in excess of that, I'm not in favor of going above what the organization has requested.
Okay. Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, this is, supports food security. We've had a number of different requests that do that. Again, as I said before, this one, 67% of the members are from Sydney for their community garden program. So although it's in North Saanich, I can justify that expenditure because 67% of the people are from Sydney.
Councillor Garnett?
My preference would have been for a more equitable total between the two remaining, but I do support us sending money over there. This is community gardens are a way for people who live in apartments and condo buildings to be able to grow food and to be able to socialize up with people in like-minded situations. So I think there's more to benefit than just food security. There is that social outreach, and I think which is it's been indicated in other things. There's a loneliness quotient to living in the community when you live in those kind of settings. So I think it supports both. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Duck?
Yeah, I support this. I'm not sure I support it for the full amount, but I will go with my colleagues' discretion on that. The people that are doing the community gardens also pay to use them, so I don't see a reduction in their fees, so they're still paying full fees. And so between the District of North Saanich and the Town of Sydney, we're funding for half the operations. So I have some concern that we're funding the full half of the operations and not so much to the benefit of the members. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, the motion on the floor is to provide Circular Farm and Food Society with a grant of $3,000. All in favor? And there's none opposed. It's carried unanimously. And the last item that has been tabled is Kidsport. Kidsport Greater Victoria, they had a request for $5,000 and we'll open to the floor. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
I would move that we grant the remaining amount of $1,650 to Kidsport.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you like to moderate?
While we've denied they haven't requested for a number of years. But we did, in 2021, we did provide $3,000, and I think there is benefit to locals.
Councillor Garnett?
Yeah, no, having spoken to this earlier, I think it's important. We do have there are people in our community who without supports like this, their children would not be able to be active in sports, which is really important in development. So I'm more than happy to support this. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Then we'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. And that, my colleagues, is the end of the Grants and Aid program. There's no other business, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Duck? Councillor Rintoul, second. All in favor? Have a good evening, everyone. It's a little later than I expected, but